Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce RTX 3050 8GB GPU, because it's the desktop version of the card, in Starfield, or Slowfield. This one is the Gigabyte Eagle model of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers as usual, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Up's GPU Z. Resizable bar is also enabled, and over on the left, we're pairing it with the i5 13600K and 32GB of DDR5 6000 MHz RAM. The CPU is also running at stock speeds, and let's get right into it, shall we? Alright, here we are, my friends, in one of the most intensive areas in the entire game, and let's start with guess the settings. So what kind of settings do you think we're utilizing? Just take a look at the graphics here. Do they look beautiful? Do they not look beautiful? Is it very dynamic with the wind effects and stuff? No, not really, of course, because it never is, even on ultra settings. But anyways, I'm gonna start counting our FPS. The GPU, even with the latest drivers, is not really utilizing the full 130 watts of power, so that's still not fixed here in Starfield, and I think it never will be fixed, honestly, because, you know, Bethesda already said that this is very well optimized. Great! Anyways, it drops into the 40s, as you can see, in worst case scenario, but it doesn't really drop from 40 frames per second, so it's actually a pretty playable experience, I would say. Now, have you guessed the settings already? Let's go over them. We're playing at the 1080p resolution using 66% resolution scale and the DLSS mod. It says FSR2 right there, but I have installed the DLSS mod, and whenever you see FSR2 right there, it's actually DLSS that's at work. And it looks pretty good with 69% sharpness here, but, you know, this is low settings with DLSS quality. 66% is quality, and it's running like this. It's not even enough to get us 60 frames per second. And what we're seeing here is essentially 720p resolution being upscaled to 1080p. It looks great, don't get me wrong. It actually fools me into thinking that this is native resolution. You can tell that it isn't in some areas, like over there, for example. There's a lot of shimmering, and right there as well. But I mean, overall, I'm actually using a 1080p monitor here today. It looks pretty good. If you have an RTX GPU, install the DLSS mod. I'll leave a link down below in the description for it, with all of the instructions inside of it. And yeah, just install the mod. It's totally worth it. Of course, these GPUs, 30 series, don't support DLSS frame generation, but you can install this frame generation mod and just not enable FG, which is what I did right here, and it's gonna work with DLSS 3.5. It looks really good, okay? And it is actually a playable experience, especially if you go to another planet like this one, for example. It gets you 60 plus FPS. It's way easier to run than the Atlantis city, or New Atlantis, or whatever it is called, from the previous planet where we were. So as you can see right here, it's still gonna drop from 60 frames per second from time to time, but it's a much smoother experience. I wish the entire game ran like this, you know, but it doesn't. But at least it doesn't stutter, you know, and it doesn't run out of VRAM on 8GB cards like The Last of Us did at the release. Some aspects of the game are, you could say, decent in terms of performance, but then you remember that we're actually playing at 720p, being upscaled to 1080p, using DLSS quality, and you remember that it's totally unacceptable for an RTX GPU, kind of a recent one, this released in 2022, and also for a pretty hefty price, you know, $250 at release, which wasn't a terrible deal because the mining craze was going on at the time, but yeah, it is kind of an expensive card that shouldn't have been this expensive, you know, but it is not capable of achieving 60 plus FPS in a recent title. That doesn't look anything special without DLSS. I'm gonna go back to the previous area, okay, and we're gonna test out some other settings next. So let's disable now the upscaling. This is now 100% resolution scale, so 1080p native resolution, and it looks softer. it actually does look softer. And today, again, I am using a 1080p monitor, so I can tell you that at native 1080p resolution, this looks worse than with DLSS set to 66%. It's not the case with FSR, by the way. FSR does make things a little bit sharper, but it also introduces some ghosting effects, and it looks pretty terrible, honestly. At 1080p at least, at 1440 in 4K it looks okay. But yeah, this is native 1080p resolution, lowest settings, and it's almost dropped from 30 frames per second over there, guys. This is extremely unimpressive performance from a 3050. Once again, it's down to the terrible optimization of this game. Okay, let's see worst case scenario right here, I guess. Usually it drops the most right in this area, 32 FPS. It also looks pretty terrible in terms of shadow detail. Look at that. And ambient occlusion. That looks absolutely terrible. Native resolution in this game is really ugly, guys. I wouldn't play like this. So let's enable DLSS again with 69% sharpness. And I'm gonna set it to 66% again, just to see those shimmery effects on the shadows. It looks a little bit better even with DLSS. See that? Upscaling the shadows gives you more shadow detail, or more accurate at least, without much noise. There's still a little bit of noise here. But yeah, compared to native resolution, it's way better with DLSS in every single way, so just use this. It's gonna run smoother, it's gonna look better, and it's how the game should have come out in the first place. Because why not include DLSS? And I have spoken to the Nvidia people that I usually speak to, the ones that send me these GPUs, and they said that they don't know if Bethesda will ever install DLSS into this game. Oh yeah, by the way, dynamic resolution only kicks in below 30 frames per second, so whether or not it's enabled, it doesn't matter in this video, because 3050 never drops from 30 FPS, thankfully, at least on low settings. Next up, let's try it on medium settings. Alright, and the medium settings preset sets the render resolution to 50%, which is kind of terrible. But again, with DLSS, with 69% sharpness, it actually looks almost acceptable. I also disabled motion blur right here. But see this? It is not an awful look, is it, guys? It's actually pretty passable in my opinion. Yes, you are gonna see a lot more of these issues with the shadow detail and noise, but you also would see those issues with FSR2 at 50%, which is the default for freaking medium settings. And the default for low settings is also 50% resolution scale, by the way, with FSR2. So, yeah, terrible presets right here in this game, guys. Do remember, however, that in other planets, as I showed you in this video, you will get a lot more FPS than here. This is worst case scenario, but I'm testing a GPU, so I like to test things in worst case scenarios. Now, it's getting really similar FPS like this with 50% resolution scale, which is essentially 540p, it goes by vertical resolution, as 1080p native resolution with the low settings. And do you spot a major difference in like the actual graphical fidelity, not the DLSS stuff being at 50%? I don't, guys. Like, it looks really similar to me right now. I don't recommend it. I really prefer the extra few FPS that you get from low settings and 66% resolution scale than this crap at 50%. But let's try it with 66% resolution scale. Maybe it's going to stay above 30 all of the time. Again, this is quality DLSS, usually, in other titles. Let's start counting the FPS, 30 still. But once again, if you are aiming for those 30 FPS locked all of the time, I mean, this is your best bet, maybe, if it doesn't drop from 30 over there by the trees. Oh boy, 31 right there. I guess it is actually going to drop from 30 FPS, guys. That is no good. Oh boy, yep, 30, 29 right there. Only a single dip so far, but I really think that over there it's going to slow down a bit further. This is nothing that can't be fixed with a little bit of an overclock to the GPU, you know. It only dips into the high 20s, so overclocking the card will definitely put you above 30 all of the time. So locking the FPS to 30 in that scenario will give you those 30 locked. That Bethesda say it's the best experience that you can have in Starfield, you know, because they made the game around 30 frames per second for some reason in 2023, and they think it's acceptable with these graphics. Hello, Bob. How's it going? Agoraphobic. Why? Why did you say that, Bob? Goodbye.
Stay away from me.
No. He's just chilling there. I just shot you in the face. He's just standing. What? Are you serious? And he's smiling at us as well. Look at him. He's very happy. What if I shoot him in the foot?
Gotta get away.
No! This is so weird. The NPCs in this game. Also, it looks pretty weird. The DLSS. It has a little tiny bit of a halo effect around moving things. I can spot it here. I'm not sure if you can spot it in the video. It's not really too distracting, and FSR does a worse job at that, so yeah. There he is. He just keeps following you with his head. It's so stupid, mate. Alright, goodbye, Bob. Oh, that ragdoll, amazing, right? Next generation. Alright, again, a little bit of an overclock would put you at 30 all of the time. I still would prefer the unlocked FPS experience with low settings and DLSS 66%. But hey, you do you. This is still a playable experience, I would say. Next up, we should try high settings. The high settings preset defaults to 62% resolution scale. I'm gonna disable dynamic resolution because I think it's gonna drop from 60. And gonna do the sharpening at 69%, still using the DLSS, of course. I'm also gonna disable the motion blur. So these are the high settings. All right, not bad. It doesn't really change too much between like medium and high, does it? In terms of FPS at least, and visuals as well. Like the visuals are very similar no matter what you use. It's truly next gen, isn't it, my friends? Oh yes. I still think that they should have added like a very low settings preset that disables a lot of the things like shadows and stuff, because they're still on low. Hello. Oh, you're running like Bob should have run. Wait, what? Why did you stop there? He forgot something. That's it. He totally forgot something. 62% resolution scale looks okay. I mean, maybe a little bit, very slightly more shimmery than it was before. I guess it's the same story. It dips down into the high 20s with 62% resolution scale and high settings preset. And you can actually lock it to 30, overclock the card slightly, and achieve 30 FPS lock the entire time, which is not bad for the 3050. DLSS is truly a savior for this little card right here, or the mod is, because they didn't bother to include it again. So yeah, you can still play on high and 1080p resolution as long as you overclock the card a little bit. Now, if you want the actual quality DLSS visuals, which is 66% of course, it is probably gonna drop a little bit further. I think, at least. It's still pretty much the same. Hi, how's it going? Goodbye, sir. So 31 FPS, 30, 29, 28. Yeah, around pretty much the same thing as we saw previously, guys. Maybe it gets 1 or 2 less FPS than 62%. So yeah, just maybe lower it down to like 58% or something like that. Shouldn't be that different. Yeah, it isn't. It still looks okay. And now you should get 30 plus all of the time. So yeah, I wish we were talking about 60 plus instead of 30 plus. Because it's 2023, you know. But hey, it's what we get. I kind of want to see it at native resolution. I think I forgot to do medium settings native. So let's do that. Disable motion blur right here. Oh my god, it crashed. I think it crashed. Yep. Alright, back to it. This is medium settings, native resolution. And it's getting to the low 30s already, so that means that it's definitely gonna drop. I mean, it did drop with 66%, right? So here we go. 28, 29. It's not too different though. We didn't gain a ton of FPS by enabling the DLSS here. So it touches 40s at times, still in the 30s. We had a few more FPS, you know, like 5 more FPS than we did at native resolution with medium settings. Let's see high at 1080p native next. Oh, yeah, no, this is way worse. This is not playable anymore. Unless you are aiming for that cinematic experience, stay away from native resolution with high settings. Jeez, yeah, no. You clearly need DLSS here. It did make a huge difference on high, actually. It's time for the ultra settings, my friend. Default to 75% resolution scale. Gonna disable dynamic resolution and set this to 69, as well as disable motion blur. And oh, it's even worse than high at native. Oh my god. Ultra is way more intensive, dude. Jesus. Nope. Totally unplayable. You should not do this. What about 66% resolution scale? And okay, it gets a slightly higher average FPS, I guess, like 24 right here. It's like I'm watching a movie at the moment. Perfect. It's beautiful. Is this Bob? Yes, it is. Goodbye, Bob. Goodbye! Oh my god. Still enough for us to kill Bob. So that's amazing. Massive slowdown there in the frame time graph. I don't know if you noticed it, but yeah. So at ultra settings, you actually do need to render it at 50% res. Otherwise, it's going to be awful. And it's still awful. I mean, it's still the same thing. 24, 25. Didn't even change one bit, did it? It's the same crap. I'm actually gonna restart the game just to make sure that everything fully applied. Now that's a little bit better. All right, no, it's not. So it seemed like it was going to be a little bit better, but then it dropped into the same values as before. Over here, getting 26, 25, 23, 22. Okay, it's down to the same values. So no, you should not play on Ultra, but let's try it with native resolution for the last setting of the video. 22 FPS, 21. It's the same thing as we've seen so far, I guess. It didn't really change much by using 75% or 66% here at this res. It is completely unplayable on Ultra. It is passable on high if you keep the resolution scale low enough. On medium, you can play it even with like quality DLSS if all you want is a 30 plus FPS experience all of the time, or 30 locked, you know. But I myself would choose the low settings with 66% resolution scale and the DLSS mod. I think it still looked okay like that, still looked good. And it gave us, what, 40 plus FPS the entire time, even here. That's the experience that I would go for with the RTX 3050, and thank you very much for watching this video. I hope this was helpful and informative to you. Catch you in the next one very soon, and as always, love you all. Bye-bye. Why are they running now? What happened? What? I'm not... Okay, I don't care. Let's go.